Good morning. Good morning. Hi, we're going to be talking about competence. Competence. If you build it, they will come. And this is coming from John C. Maxwell, the 21 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader, becoming the person others want to follow. And so we're going to be doing 21 days of this until we get to the end, and it's 21. So we're going to be talking about competence. And it says competence goes beyond words. It's the leader's ability to say it, plan it, and do it in such a way that others know that you know how and know that they want to follow you. And that's actually a quote from John C. Maxwell. And then John Gardner, an author, says, "The society which scorns excellence in plumbing, because plumbing is a humble activity, and tolerates shoddiness in philosophy because it is an exalted activity, will have neither good plumbing nor good philosophy. Neither its pipes nor its theories will hold water." And so when we talk about competence, we want to talk about, again, fleshing it out. And if you can see the consistency between what we've been talking about from when we started this, this series on leadership, on the qualities of leadership, fleshing it out. We all admire people who display high competence, whether they are precision craftsmen, world-class athletes, or successful business leaders. But the truth is that you don't have to be Fabergé, Michael Jordan, or Bill Gates to excel in the area of competence. If you want to cultivate that quality, here's what you need to do. So John Maxwell is telling us what we need to do under the fleshing it out. And so we're going to talk about some examples that he gives us. Number one, you have to show up every day. There is a saying, all things come to him who waits. Unfortunately, sometimes it's just the leftovers from the people who got there first. So if you don't show up, and you don't show up on time, and you don't show up at early or at a time where the getting's good, then you're probably going to miss out, and you're either going to get leftovers, or you're going to get crumbs, or you're not going to get anything. And I'm reminded of a time one of my former pastors said that a lot of times people show up to the church picnic, because every year we'd have a church picnic, and that people show up to the church picnic at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but the church picnic started at 10 or 11. And actually earlier than that, you could get out there as early as 9 o'clock. And so people would show up late, 1 o'clock, and expect to get a full-fledged meal when 9 times out of 10, there's only leftovers. So he always used to remind families and the church congregants to show up early, or to show up at the time, or start somewhere within a decent hour at the time of the picnic that started, so that you will get a decent meal and you won't have to, be left with leftovers or crumbs and have disappointment when you show up and say they ate all the food. Because we have heard that before, when you show up late and you go, they didn't have any more food. But what time did the event start, and what time did you actually make your way to the event? So all things come to him who waits. But if you just waiting around, you might just get the leftovers, or maybe even the crumbs. So responsible people, he goes on now, responsible people show up when they're expected. So if you're expected to be there at 9, show up a little before 9. If you're expected to be there at 10, show up a little before 10. If you're expected to be there at 11, you see where I'm going? Show up a little ahead of time. Even if you're going for an interview, show up before the interview a little on time, so you can go over some thoughts. You can go over some information in your head about what you want to say and how you want to answer the questions. Be prepared and just do a little review. And if you're going to have a meeting with your staff, show up on time and be prepared, because highly competent people, they take it a step further. They just don't show up in body only. They come ready to play every day, no matter how they feel, what kind of circumstances they face, or how difficult they expect the game to be. But they show up and they put on their best self to present information to the people that are following them. And then number 2, keep improving. Like Benjamin Franklin, all highly competent people continually search for ways to keep learning, growing, and improving. They do that by asking why. After all, the person who knows how will always have a job, but the person who knows why will always be the boss. So you may know how to do your job, but if you go a step further to keep improving yourself, then you'll know why, the answer, and you will be able to be a more effective, competent leader. And then number 3, he says, follow through with excellence. I never met a person I considered competent who didn't follow through. I bet it's the same for you. Willa A. Foster remarked, quality is never an accident. It is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, intelligent direction, and skillful execution. Skillful execution. It represents the wise choice of many alternatives. Performing at a high level of excellence is always a choice, an act of the will. As leaders, we expect our people to follow through when we hand them the ball. They expect that and a whole lot more from us as their leaders. So if you're handing someone the ball and you're playing basketball, you expect them to either dribble the ball, pass the ball, or shoot the ball. And you're hoping that it goes through the rim. They expect that and a whole lot more from us as their leaders. That's something to think about. And then number 4, accomplish more than expected. He says highly competent people always go the extra mile. For them, good enough is never good enough. In Men in Midlife Crisis, Jim Conway writes that some people feel a weakening of the need to be a great man and an increasing feeling of let's just get through this the best way we can. Never mind hitting home runs. Let's just get through the ball game without getting beamed. Leaders cannot afford to have that kind of attitude. They need to do the job and then some, day in and day out. So you don't want to just get through the game. You don't want to just get through your workday being in leadership or even as a follower, but you need to be able to have a better attitude and be the best that you can. Do the best that you can, not just be able to get through it, but to be able to do it and do it in a manner that's going to glorify Christ. Do it in a manner that's going to help your people be more successful. Do it in a manner where you're setting people up to success. You're setting people up to succeed, not setting them up to fail. And then number 5 is inspire others. Highly competent leaders do more than perform at high level. They inspire and motivate their people to do the same. While some people rely on relational skills alone to survive, effective leaders combine those skills with high competence to take their organizations to new levels of excellence and influence. So we just can't rely on relational skills. We have to have more than just relational skills. Because some people can talk a good game and relate well to others, but that doesn't mean that they are a good leader. And then reflecting on it. Where do you stand when it comes to getting the job done? Do you attack everything you do with fervor and perform at the highest level possible? Or is good enough sometimes good enough for you? Well, that's good enough. When you think about people who are competent, you're really considering only 3 types of people. Number 1, those who can see what needs to happen. Number 2, those who can make it happen. And number 3, those who can make things happen when it really counts. And see, if you can see what needs to be happen, then you ought to participate in making it happen. And then make it count while you're making it happen. See, when it comes to your profession, where do you consistently perform? Are you a thinker, a doer, or a clutch player? The better you are, the greater potential for influence you will have with your people. And then we want to bring it home. To improve your competence, there are some suggestions here on to do the following. And he says, get your head in the game. If you've been mentally or emotionally detached from your work, it's time to re-engage. And that's what happens a lot of times, even as followers when you're on your job. But we're talking about leaders, but followers can become great leaders. So that's why I'm including followers in this as well, because if you are emotionally and mentally detached. And a lot of people sometimes get emotionally and mentally detached, and they are not engaged like they should. And some people are just coming just for a paycheck, or they're just coming to be curious, or they're just coming to be negative, or to just see what's going on so they can go back and take it back and talk about it with others. I've seen that in leadership so many times. It's not just on your job, it's in activities, it's in functions, it's in things that you arrange and put together. It's in so many things you can see. Even at church, sometimes people come to church just to be curious, or they'll come to hear someone preach just so they can be curious to see what they're saying and how good of a preacher they are, or a speaker, so they can go back and talk about it. But they're not engaged. They lack engagement, because if they lacked engagement, they will be more leaning towards the positive side of trying to get it done, trying to be a beacon for Christ, trying to help, trying to help lead. If they see something go wrong, how can we fix it, and be more of a person that's with a solution than somebody that's that has the problem and that's not willing to help with the solution, but willing to continue creating a problem and even making a bigger problem. So when we look at it, we got to get our head in the game, and we got to re-engage in what we're doing if we lack engagement. And first, rededicate. So that means we have to rededicate ourselves to the job. Whatever it is that you're doing, we have to rededicate and determine to give it an appropriate amount of your undivided attention. You got to give an appropriate amount. And then second, figure out why you have been detached. Sometimes we do get attached. We've have all been guilty of being detached, but we got to ask ourselves, why are we detached? And do you need new challenges? Is it just something that's not no more challenging to you? So are you in conflict with your boss or coworkers? So if you're on a team, are you getting along with your coworkers? Are you in conflict with them? Do you not like them? Are you having problems with them? Are you in conflict with your boss? Are you having differences of opinion and how to do things? And the boss is giving you instructions and you decide that's not how you want to do things, or you can see things different than what your supervisor or boss or manager is leading you or instructing you to do. And are you in a dead end job that's not going anywhere? So you got to identify the source of the problem and create a plan to resolve it. Some people are in dead end jobs, but it's a job. And that's what they say. It's a job, and I just go and do it. And I just do good enough. But they're really not happy. They're really not fulfilling as much as they could, and may not even be working up to their full potential because they're in a dead end job that's not going anywhere. So again, identify the source of the problem and create a plan to resolve it. And then redefine the standard. If you're not performing at a consistently high level, re-examine your standards. Are you shooting too low? Do you cut corners? If so, hit your mental reset button and outline more demanding expectations for yourself. You got to do it. If you want to be the leader that people want to follow, there are some things as being in leadership that you got to work on and identify and recognize. And then find 3 ways to improve. And if you got to write these down when you're thinking about it and meditating on it and doing mindfulness activities, think of 3 ways, find 3 ways to improve, and make sure that they're measurable, that they can be accomplished. Because if they're not measurable, how do you know if they're going to work? And make sure that you can accomplish them. Any goal that you set for yourself or others, it has to be a goal that people can reach within reason of what the situation is, or the workload, or what you're arranging, if it's a march or a walk or whatever it may be, or a retreat. Make sure that it's a goal that they can reach. So nobody keeps improving without being intentional about it. So you have to be intentional and do a little research to find 3 things, like I said, but you do the research that you can do to improve your professional skills. Then dedicate the time and money to follow through on them. Dedicate the time and money to follow through on them. And then our daily takeaway. And I'm going to share this with you where it says, I read an editorial in Texas Business not long ago that said, we are truly the lost generation, huffing and puffing down the fast track to nowhere, always looking to the dollar sign for direction. And that's what happens a lot of times with people today. You see it in current times, people looking to the dollar sign for direction. And I'm sure people can think of, when I say this, they can think of a thing that's been going on for 2 years, and they can see what's going on with this whole situation, that people that are involved in it, they are looking to the dollar sign for direction. But then we are truly a lost generation because we're huffing and puffing down the fast track to nowhere. And if you go back to Genesis, when the downfall of man, what did he say about the man will have the sweat of their brow and they'll keep working and having to slave and work hard. So huffing and puffing down the track to nowhere. And I know some people feel like they're huffing and puffing down a track to nowhere and they're looking to the dollar sign for direction. But you got to look to Jesus. Look to Jesus for the direction, and he will direct your path. He will order your steps if you look to Jesus for your direction, for your purpose in this daily takeaway. And this is what I'm saying. But yes, Maxwell does good and he gives us information, but I'm talking about now we have to look to Jesus for the dollar sign for look to Jesus for the direction, and not the dollar sign, but looking to Jesus for the direction. See, that's the only standard that some people can recognize, is that dollar sign for direction. And see, that shouldn't be the standard. And that shouldn't be the only standard. The only standard is to look to Jesus for direction. And he will provide all of your needs, and he will even give you a new direction, a new opportunity. He will even turn you from being on that lost, road that you're on, that you're down that path, that you're going nowhere, huffing and puffing. He can turn all that around for you. And instead of you being lost, you will be found. And instead of being on the fast track to nowhere, you will be able to go somewhere, because you will be on the path to Jesus and his righteousness. And so we shouldn't only recognize a dollar sign for direction, because it says that's the only standard we recognize. We have no built-in beliefs, no ethical boundaries. And we got to have built-in beliefs. And if you believe on Jesus Christ and his word and his statutes and standards, the biblical concepts, then you will have beliefs. And if you don't have them built in already, it's not too late to get in God's word and to study and to learn his word. And then you got to have ethical boundaries. So many times people don't have ethical boundaries. They're working from an unethical working from an unethical standpoint. And that's not good. Not good at all. But you're only as good as your private standards. So what are your private standards? What are your private standards? And do you go out publicly and pretend to have these other standards publicly, but in your in your privateness, in yourself, within your personal self, you're operating on some other standards. But when you present to the world, you're presenting some standards to them, but then you're not walking in the standards that you present to them. And when was the last time you gave a task your absolute best, even though nobody but you would know about it? Got to give it your best. So I pray on today this will help someone in your leadership abilities and on your journey. And may God bless you all on today. Peace.